21st century begins October 1, 1982. Epcot Center, Walt Disney World.
October 1st, 1982. Epcot Center's opening day. Guests were ecstatic over all the new attractions to visit, each one uniquely being appealing. Communication, energy, and agriculture, the one that stood out among them all was imagination, and rightfully so. What does imagination entail? What amorphous reality could possibly entertain a guest? The towering pair of glass-shaped pyramids that constantly shimmered in the light seemed to entice guests enough to walk to the Imagination Pavilion to ride the beautiful attraction. But if you attended this opening day, specifically at the Imagination Pavilion, you would have left empty-handed. The centerpiece Journey into Imagination was having difficulties in and of itself, delaying its opening to the world by a few months. Fooled and frustrated, some guests may have felt leaving, but others that stood around were still given a treat. Hidden within the Imagination Pavilion, two minute attractions still held their end of the bargain, entertaining guests to the fullest extent. ImageWorks, an interactive exhibition that allowed guests to play, create, and explore with their imagination. It aimed to engage visitors in imaginative play and interactive experiences related to art and technology. ImageWorks engraved its quirky fun into the minds of guests, creating memories that would last a lifetime, like walking through the rainbow corridors. After guests had their creative fun, they would take a short escalator ride downstairs into the queue of Magic Journeys. Here, guests would have viewed an 8-minute pre-show called Making Memories as they waited for the main show. Once the doors opened on the left, guests would have grabbed a purple pair of 3D glasses to view the dazzling images Magic Journeys had waiting for them.
Now we can all enjoy a preview of Magic Journeys.
Unbeknownst to them, they were preparing for a languid fever dream. Trust me, this is going to get really weird. Fading in from blackness, the film takes the audience on a quite tame journey, looking at the world through the eyes of 5 children, blending scenes of meadows, clouds, and underwater wonders. The haunting chorus set a tone of exploration of ordinary yet mystical experiences. Hopefully by this point, you're catching my drift by now. Now as the film continued, the etherealness and languidity seemed to surge. And something's telling me this was written by Snoop Dogg and Martha Stewart. From horseback riding on the beach, to performing trapeze artists, to carnival antics, the scenes unfold like a dream with surreal transitions and a mix of eerie and whimsical tones. The finale brings the audience back to the starting point, underscoring the cyclical nature of this imaginative journey. The film closes with grandiose questions, leaving the audience with a sense of wonder. After this 17-minute spectacle, guests walking out were left content. All were amazed and starstruck by the impressive 3D that was never seen before at its time, and standing right outside, the pleased creator, Murray Lerner, eavesdropped hearing all of the positive reviews of his film, Magic Journeys. But how did we get here? But how did he get here? This is the story of how Magic Journeys' treacherous journey begins.
Mr. Morrow, could you spare a few minutes to explain mission control to our passengers? Oh, Mr. Morrow.
Of course, glad to. Welcome aboard, space travelers.
Exactly 3 years prior, on October 1st, 1979, director and writer Murray Lerner attending Epcot Center's groundbreaking ceremony sparked the birth of Magic Journeys. At this time, Murray was a well-known American documentary and experimental film director, producer, cinematographer, and also screenwriter who would later go on to win an Oscar for Best Documentary in 1981 for From Out of Mozart, Isaac Stern in China. Now, this was not Lerner's first marathon. He previously wrote and directed another 3D film titled Sea Dream for Marineland of Florida in 1979. Murray said, "The people at Disney had seen Sea Dream at the Marineland studios and contacted me about doing several films. I was at the groundbreaking ceremony for Epcot and noticed that each pavilion areas was stacked out with balloons. One in particular caught my eye. It said Images and Imagination. I had been asked to create a 3D film for another pavilion, but I immediately knew that the film for Images and Imagination had to be in 3D. I spoke with the people at WED, and they must have been thinking along similar lines because they agreed on the spot and the other films were forgotten." After Murray attended this momentous moment, he traveled back to a studio in Manhattan in 1980 and began to write the first iterations of what would become Magic Journeys. First, I began sketching out ideas for the script. I felt that the film should be an experience that stood on its own rather than being tied into a park ride. I wanted it to be a very powerful, imaginative experience. As you can probably tell, Lerner was not just looking to make a clever documentary, but he hopes to reinvent 3D movies and set a new standard for following movies, imbuing his own version with unprecedented dignity and quality. Murray's goal from the get-go was to get audiences involved, to make them feel as if they were playing a part in the film, which 3D could successfully do that as he could play with space and dimensionality. To aid Murray in his abstract idea, many individuals played significant roles in the making of Magic Journeys, such as producers, cinematographers, and even the cast. A few notable mentions being Philip Barron, who played the magician, and Michelle Barron, who played the female funambulist, and the main character played by Lyndon Todd Cowden. Going on a brief, slight tangent here, Lyndon was gifted the role over 200 other children who auditioned because he was the only one who knew how to horseback ride. Later on after the film, Lyndon became a championship rodeo roper and has appeared in a handful of other Western films.
A child's imagination grows into a bigger-than-life circus as part of a magical three-dimensional film journey being produced for the Imagination Pavilion at Epcot. Here, the director rehearses the action with special Disney-designed 3D camera systems being used for the first time anywhere. Sophisticated production techniques will bring three-dimensional magic to the screen on a grand scale.
As the stages of production started, it became apparent to the crew that the making of this film was surely no magical journey, but rather a tragic one. For example, director Murray had used almost the entirety of the film's original budget early into shooting. Albeit it was already known Magic Journeys was an ambitious fleet, being labeled a research and development project by WED Enterprises and sponsors Eastman Kodak Company. With experimenting comes much trial and error, and with that, there must be funds to back it all. To add to the pile of problems, the biggest one surfaced. Initially, the planned Todd AO camera seemed to not satisfy the crew. To solve this monolith of a problem, Steve Hines, a mechanical engineer hired on by Disney from Kodak, and Imagineer Don Iwerks, a laboratory technician, teamed up to design and construct a camera that would live up to the crew and soon-to-be audience's expectations. This dual 3D camera rig mounted on an L-shaped base for 65mm stereo motion pictures came with special amenities, like allowing the use of wide-angle lenses, being adaptable for Mitchell FC cameras, and having the ability to shoot in slow motion and high speed while filming. This was extremely impressive since it was light years more sophisticated than most of the cameras at the time. After construction, the cameras were then tested on Disney's backlot in August of 1980, with much success. Don Iwerks was later quoted saying, "Steve designed the system in record time, working days, nights, and weekends. He followed the project through manufacture, assembly, testing, and production, shooting in a very thorough manner." A total of 5 configurations were used to film Magic Journeys, being Heinz's basic, aerial, and underwater rig, along with a Canadian rig, and 2 cameras, each one having specific jobs for specific shots. Now, what makes Magic Journeys significant is that it utilized advanced film technology, prime example being the creation of the cameras. But what tackled another area was the utilization of early CGI, or computer-generated imagery. An enormous amount of CGI was scattered all throughout the film. The title sequence alone reading Walt Disney Productions Presents and Magic Journeys that sweeps across the audience's eyes cost about $500,000 alone. Adding more to its wow factor, at the time, this was the longest computer shot ever done. These images were then generated on a small video screen called a CRT, or cathode ray tube, and 30 seconds of filming required 120 hours of computer imaging. These images then had to be digitalized by scanning each individual frame. Magic Journeys also established several other firsts. The first combination of computer-generated animation with live action in 3D, the first use of matte shots in 3D, the first polarized movie in 3D, and the first use of blue screen in, you guessed it, 3D. The film also used advanced technology at the time, such as Dolby Stereo and digital sound. And speaking of sound, Magic Journeys didn't just consist of visuals, but also a beautiful score and lyrics. Magic Journeys was a theme and the soul for the attraction for which the film's script was wrapped around it. But to get to the creation of this melody, I think it's only fair to recognize a few individuals and a few inspirations. Now, this beautiful song didn't come from out of thin air, obviously, because a temp track was used that inspired the lyrics and composing of Magic Journeys. Now, what was this mysterious song? The Windmills of Your Mind by Noel Harrison.
Run like a circle in a spiral, like a wheel within a wheel, never ending or beginning on a never spinning reel, like a snowball down a mountain or a carnival balloon, like a carousel that's turning, running rings around the moon, like a clock whose hands are sweeping past the minutes of its face, and the world is like an apple whirling silently in space, like the circles that you find in the windmills of your mind, like a tunnel.
The Windmills of Your Mind can be described as a classic depiction of how the human mind deals with its own motivations and temptations, possibly analogous to Magic Journeys. Both songs' lyrics are both very ambiguous, having no sense of direction or storytelling, but being very sophisticated and very subliminal, as Richard Sherman puts it. The masterminds behind this derived beautiful song, or Magic Journeys, was written and composed by none other than the Sherman brothers, Robert Sherman and Richard Sherman, and pushed to the side by another composer, Richard Clements. Now you may be familiar with these two individuals, knowing they dabbled in almost every area of the Disney company, making wonderful melodies like Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious, There's a Great Big Beautiful Tomorrow, It's a Small World, Making Memories, One Little Spark, I Want to Be Like You, and the theme for Walt Disney's Enchanted Tiki Room, just to name a few. Richard claimed that the theme for Magic Journeys was, and I quote, one of the most imaginative songs we ever wrote, celebrating the idea of everyday sights and sounds with an almost mystic wonderment. To create the feel of 3 dimensions musically, we wrote a theme for the lyric and an ever-weaving secondary theme to be played simultaneously with it. Both themes would glide on a rather complex, ever-changing harmonic bass line known as a circle of fifths, but maybe that's getting a little too technical. Later on, the brothers later claimed that Magic Journeys was the utmost laborious song they ever endured in their career. But it seems it all paid off because Imagineer Marty Sklar particularly loved that song.
Now, there's another song from that attraction that I know is a favorite of Marty Sklar's, wherever he might be. And I think, why don't you just play this, because I think everybody will recognize this as well.
Just an ordinary day, all at once you're on your way to a place that cannot be. No one knows what turns the key. You have found 1,000 eyes, whirling images arise. For a moment they are clear, in a flash they disappear. Magic journeys, mystic flights, on the wings of unexpected sounds and sights. Magic journeys, are they real? Do they mirror what we think or sense or feel? Neither dreaming nor pretending, no beginning and no ending.
Later at the Magic Eye Theater, Magic Journeys was heard on a computer-controlled soundtrack recorded completely digitally with a 42-piece orchestra. Assisting the melody, the Disney Studio Chorus provided a harmonic beauty by singing the haunting lyrics. All these different pieces that added to its entirety were then digitalized and then generated on 2-inch tape and piped in from Epcot Computer Central, where the Astuter Computer Review featuring then-host Early the Pearly played. Now around this time, during the post-production stage of Magic Journeys, concerns arose if the film was even going to be completed for Epcot Center's grand opening. Magic Journeys was running risk of not being ready at the Imagination Pavilion, and remember at this time it was already well known the main attraction, Journey into Imagination, was certainly going to be delayed. If the Imagination Pavilion didn't open with any attraction ready, Kodak had a clause which allowed them to pull out of their contract, meaning Disney was liable for all the costs. So, WED Enterprises had to do something as a safety precaution. The Walt Disney Company decided to call up their guy to save their butts. Now enter director Mike Jitlove. During September of 1982, Jitlove created a 70-second live-action film featuring Dreamfinder, played by Ron Schneider, and a voiceover of Figment, done by Will Ryan.
And is it now the time for a preview of the Magic Journey film?
By golly, you're right. I'd better hurry along.
This film was coined Dreamfinder Run and would be used as an introduction to a mashed together completed clips of Magic Journeys, assumed to be about 5 minutes long. Murray Lerner was later informed about the backup film, which prompted him to rush production. And if you can remember from earlier, the entire crew was already fed up with Murray and his indecisive antics, so they collectively decided to give him what was due. Now what could that possibly allude to? The crew pulling an elaborate prank by gaslighting Murray. During a screening for Randy Bright, Marty Sklar, and other Disney executives, Eric Brevik, who was the overseer of photography and visual effects, provided everyone with a pair of liquid crystal shutter glasses. But for Murray, he was given a special pair, or in other words, 2 left polarizing filters, making the 3D effect not work at all. The 3D kite shot was played on a continuous loop, obviously impressing everyone except Murray. Murray kept complaining that something was wrong, that all the 3D had simply disappeared. Meanwhile, everyone else who was not in on the joke believed that Lerner completely lost it. Honestly, he probably thought he finally succumbed to the stress. But soon, the stress would dissipate as the storyboarding, casting, filming, experimenting, and editing would now lead to Magic Journey's completion. Barely. Well, the physical film canisters for Magic Journeys were all the way in Burbank, California, and Epcot Center was all the way in Kissimmee, Florida. If you didn't realize, both being about 2,500 miles apart. But don't worry, Imagineer Mark Eads is here to save the day, literally days before Epcot Center's opening, precisely on September 24th, 1982. After the film was finalized by Technicolor, Eads would be told to guard them well and hand carry the 2 film canisters on the red-eye flight to Florida to get them installed to the pavilion for the screening the following night. This official screening was the talk of the town because all the higher-ups would be there, such as Card Walker, Don Tatum, and Ron Miller, and other big CEOs from corporate sponsors for all of Epcot Center, such as Kodak, General Motors, General Electric, Exxon, the Bell System, Kraft, American Express, AT&T, Coca-Cola, and other private companies. So in other words, Mark had an immense amount of pressure on his shoulders. Eads took a connecting flight from LAX to Atlanta, then Orlando. Once he arrived, he would spend the rest of his day tirelessly working to get Magic Journeys up and running, constantly being pressured by Ron Miller and Randy Bright, demanding that Magic Journeys would run at 9 p.m. that night. And so it did, and of course it was received well. After nearly 3 years in the making, Magic Journeys was ready for its debut. In the end, Magic Journeys cost a whopping $8 million in 1982, and adjusted for inflation, roughly a staggering $30 million today. This hefty price for Magic Journeys is quite understandable once you realize that the film consisted of 110 sequences, each of them meticulously charted on storyboard before a single foot of film was shot. These sequences would then go on to be projected on a 58 by 30 foot silver screen in a 592 seat theater, and were shown at 75 frames per second compared to the average 24 frames per second at the time. Oh, and just one more problem to top it all off, but this time I'll let Imagineer Tony Baxter tell of the story.
Yeah, so we're here out front. We had gone up there with Randy Bright and determined this would be a really unique thing, and that was 16 millimeter. Everything was great. Opening day, it was going to be our only show with, I think we had the ImageWorks.
Yeah, we did. Yeah.
And then I'll get into Fountains in a minute. But so I go in there. We'd looked at it that night before, and it was stunning. So I go in the morning just to make sure, and it's on the loop, so it's running already. Put on the glasses, and it was double images. And I'm going, what is different? That night before, the carpenters came in and put a glass in the window between the projector. So I grabbed, there was a carpenter out and working outside. This is early in the morning on October 1. And he had a hammer. And I said, can I borrow your camera? And I went in there and I busted. And in came all the security guards, and they thought I was trying to sabotage the opening day. And and I felt guilty because I was breaking this expensive glass and all that. But I finally straightened it out, and we got that open. And then you came out of the 3D movie and went through the fountains, but we got incredible response from that movie. It was a stunning film. This was where it happened. Yeah, so. Yeah.
Guests eagerly waited in the queue to pass through the doors of the Magic Eye Theater to see the wonderful show. Quite surprisingly, the 17-minute film seemed to be up to par with other attractions in Future World, being one of the most critically acclaimed with the longest wait times, along with Spaceship Earth and the Universe of Energy. The Magic Eye Theater could accommodate 2,400 guests per hour and was never bare during its first few weeks, filling up all 592 seats. One woman stated, "The movie was terrific," as others murmured positive reviews of the film. And remember who was standing just outside? Murray Lerner, pleased with all the feedback. Murray stated, "I think the movie is important because it represents a new approach to movie making. It initiates an audience desire to freely associate with the actions on screen. After you strip away the technical aspects and beautiful music score, you should be left with a feeling of satisfaction, a sense that your imagination has literally taken you on a journey to places you have never been." When Murray was asked how he created this unique film, his response was, "I don't know where it came from, my imagination, I guess." Magic Journeys played to more than 19 million guests during its first few years and because of this, the cumulative decision was made to bring the film to other parks across the globe, at Disneyland, Tokyo Disneyland, and later the Magic Kingdom. But sadly, after a few years, the film began to decline in popularity among guests. Magic Journeys began to show its age just like everything else in Epcot Center, and with the impending influence of then CEO Michael Eisner and the tackiness of the late 1980s through the millennium, all the attractions in Future World started to get a makeover for the worst. Journey into Imagination was downgraded to Journey into Your Imagination, Kitchen Cabaret spoiled, becoming Food Rocks, Horizon sat vacant for years, later becoming Mission Space, and IP would soon infiltrate every area in the park, i.e. the seas with Nemo's and friends. Over the course of its 11-year run, Magic Journeys was seen by 60 million guests and still remains a landmark and stereoscopic film that exploits many unique parameters of 3D photography. But sadly, it's almost forgotten, and often considered strange, which begs the simple question, why? To put it simply, Magic Journeys is just forgettable. It's dull, and it's off-putting, as most people would say, hence the reason why it was replaced. Magic Journeys had to make way for the highly anticipated attraction Captain EO, featuring the hot topic celebrity at the time, Michael Jackson. I think we can all agree Magic Journeys had nothing on Captain EO. But the attraction also closed due to its dwindling popularity among guests, and outdatedness. Its connotation with weirdness is understandable once you realize a mix of odd synthesized sounds, ominous lyrics, lack of dialogue, non-linear or disjointed plot, and a sense of forebodingness transitioning from scene to scene left most very uneasy. The lucky few who watched Magic Journeys in person claim that it was nightmare fuel for them as a child. The only thing Magic Journeys is actually memorable for is its beautiful score. It's also quite hilarious how its pre-show became more popular than the show itself. Making Memories was later used on a lot of promotional videos and was notably featured on the Disney Sing-Along Songs video, Disneyland Fun.
Camera, hold your breath and say cheese. And with every single shot we take, we are making memories. Making memories, making memories. Taking pictures is making memories.
Though its demise, Magic Journeys sadly lives on past its closure. For example, a verse can be heard on Epcot's temporary show, Epcot Forever.
Magic journeys, misty flights, on the wings of unexpected sounds and sights.
Or in the secluded Imagination Pavilion bathrooms, instrumental renditions can still be heard daily since Epcot Center's opening in 1982. Finally, in the hearts of those who still hold it near and dear, such as me. Some individuals express their love in different ways or in honoration by devoting their channel name to Magic Journeys. Overall, Magic Journeys was an innocent, mysterious film for most, and yes, some opinions contradict each other. Some say it's blatantly weird, others say it's beautiful, and I come with the argument saying it's beautiful because it's weird. Magic Journeys is just an eccentric film that you wouldn't see Disney make today. The beautiful score coupled with the dazzling visuals, it's something that's unique to its time. Lastly, Murray said this: "You can't understand the film unless you see it with an audience." With that, I surely hope this video about the creation of this film makes most more appreciative of it.
Probably, but I don't like to go into that.
No? And among your films, do you have a favorite?
No, I think Festival was probably, I can see that that's the most unique in terms of the period and the time and what I brought to it, but I have a lot of other favorites. I did a lot of 3D work, and I think my major 3D film for Disney was also a favorite and hasn't been equaled since then.
What do you think about 3D